Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. We got a bunch of different things to talk about tonight, and how many of them we actually talk about will depend on how long it takes to talk about them. I had the notes for two of the topics written yesterday, and I was all set to shoot a video last night, but then something happened and I was not able to shoot the video last night, which that then in turn turns into a lesson in this particular video. And it all ties into why I don't normally like doing videos like the last video. I know people will like watching them, and I could get tons and tons and tons of views if all I did was talk about the world from the standpoint of like the mechanics of darkness, the dark side of it. Like people are fascinated with it. But instead I choose to put more of my attention on the light. And that's for a reason. That's for a lot of reasons actually. That's experience. That's having learned my lessons and stuff like that. I'm trying to get people to a point that they want to get to without inevitably steering them into things they don't necessarily need to experience or know about, because I've actually done it. So that is one of the biggest differences between this channel and countless other channels out there that talk about such things. I mean, you got plenty of Billy Carsons and everyone's got to teach you about the secrets, and the Sumerians did this and the Mesopotamians did that and the Egyptians and the aliens and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, you're finding lots of nice books, I see. What can you do? What can you do? What can you teach people to do? What is direct firsthand experience? I don't see a whole lot of that out there. I'm not saying it's not out there. I'm saying I don't see a whole lot of it. I mean, we could sit around the campfire and tell stories all live long day, but does it get you anywhere? But people are, because depending on the degree of ego mind that they still exist in, especially the original ego mind, people are more drawn to hearing about the negative stuff. I'm trying to do people a favor by steering them around it, plain and simple. Uh, yeah, it doesn't benefit you. It does not, especially in the times that we're in now, where there's not time to go around and play Dungeons and Dragons and explore all this type of stuff. It's like, what do you have to do to connect to the light right now? And I think maybe for some people like that, the hero's journey or whatnot, you don't go seeking the light until you're in the dark. That's always been a big thing. It's like, that's where you find the light, is in the dark. You don't look for it until you need it. There's that too. But I think enough people have been through enough stuff at this point to where they would rather prefer. Like, what would you rather? I mean, honestly, what would you rather learn? Would you rather learn, oh, you're in a place that's a lot worse than you freaking think. You just can't see it. And there's reasons why you can't see it, but you can learn to see it if you want to see it, and then you're going to wish you hadn't seen it. Or would you rather learn there is a there is something wonderful, something great, something awesome that is being hidden from you, that is everything you could ever want? Would you rather find that? Which do you want to learn about? Which do you want to experience? Now, I know the answer to that, unfortunately, because I can look at video analytics. I can see what videos get watched more. And more often than not, the videos that talk about the dark stuff in the world get watched more. And I get it. It's like horror movies or science fiction movies. It's fun to watch on TV. It's interesting to be scared and ooh, I want to go on an adventure and stuff when it's on TV. You know, it's one thing to watch Art the Clown on TV, but if Art the Clown is suddenly standing in your living room, that's a whole nother story. You're like, yikes. I would rather have anybody but Art the Clown. Can I can I get Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers? Because this guy's freaking not right. But that's what you're faced with in this world. And it all comes down to what you can see and what you can't see, all comes down to how your mind has been programmed. It's that simple. This place has very specific ways it functions, just like a computer program, and it's hard to see it from inside of it. But the reason why you have hard walls, you know, if the shoe fits, in your reality, so that you are constantly judging things on whether you believe it's real or not believe it's real. The reason you have these hard walls of experience is because they were taught to you. They were taught to you by authority ever since you were around 5 years old, reinforced constantly by the media, by authority. Anybody that sees anything that's outside the well-defined program that authority says is real, well, then they get labeled crazy. They've got some sort of disorder, they're delusional, because it's not what we say is real. No. The the consensus reality that was dictated to you by authority, and again, consensus is like, oh yeah, we all agree this is what's real. That defines what you can perceive. And then you automatically dismiss anything outside of that. But not only is there plenty of dark stuff that's constantly messing with you that hides behind those well-defined walls, but there's lots of good stuff too, ready to help you, that's also behind those well-defined walls, because they put everybody on a path. Like, this is what approved and agreed upon spirituality is. It's going to church. And the biggest thing that I see when it comes to that is nobody has any spiritual experiences. Not really. Not not the not the adept, like what they would call spiritual experiences, like, oh, the Lord told me that, I don't know, I'm doing a good job or something. They're not encountering things walking around out here on the street. But there are also mechanics just in what you put your attention on, what your energy is doing, and that also um, affects how you think, how you feel, what you experience. And one of those mechanics is what I call light pressure. I've only done one video on light pressure before. That was the first time she taught it to me, but it came up again yesterday, last night, and this morning, light pressure, because of what happened here. And I think it's a really good way to put something into a perspective, to visualize it, to understand it, to make it make sense. And it also fits within the previous models that she's given us before, including the water game, which I've talked about before. That was the thing that I saw the day she took all the veils off. You don't want all the veils to come off. I'm telling you that right now. You I mean, yeah, if it's a path where you're going for the ultimate prizes and stuff like that, and she determines that, that's one thing. You think you want the veils off, you don't. You just don't. You wouldn't be able to function if you had all the veils off. So you have to learn how to control your reality and your mind. You have to be the author of your reality and not the world's. Right now, everybody reads the world's book. and what the world says is real. You have to be your own determining factor if you're going to discover anything. Because all of you have so much untapped power if you simply believed that you did and knew how to look for it. But man, you have to try things. You have to dig down and make changes into your head. Sometimes it feels kind of scary, the level of experimentation that we do. You know, like the original Lumen protocols and stuff like that. Cutting away parts of your old ego self. Like some of the wording you got to use, like I've said it before in the videos, like it's a bit scary. If it's a bit scary, that's how you know you're doing it right. Like if you're writing out a script, like I'm permanently letting go of this, that, you're basically writing a script as if you're erasing your identity permanently. And if it's enough to make you nervous, like you're doing it right, it won't happen the way you think it happens. It's just you kind of notice it over time. You're like, oh yeah, I don't have those problems anymore. You become less and less the person that the world designed you to be, and more of what you designed you to be, what the light designed you to be. But anyway, that's enough preamble. Let's jump into this. We'll start with light pressure, and then we'll talk about some of the other things that we got notes on. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
I dream about things way beyond this atmosphere. Can you imagine floating weightless, like a satellite in the black sky?
Run.
As I was getting ready to get into this next segment, Lumen reminded me of something. It's a good point, because like what I said in the beginning, like I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything, but like I think it matters when it comes to like who are you learning from on YouTube? Like, because anybody can get a bunch of books together and make a really nice presentation with nice graphics and things like that. But what can they actually do? You know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Like, I think that's fair. Now, I can't show you certain things because it's within my mind. It's within my layers of perception, like Lumen. However, the energy in the stuff that I access through Lumen, through Christ and Sophia, that is provable on a subjective level. And she wanted me to like read this. This is the last review that I got on the Etsy store. And I'll clarify one little point on that because I actually talked to the person later. But it says, I bought a pendant for myself and a pendant with a bracelet for my daughter. She's talking about these, the Benedict bracelets. She is very sensitive to energy, and as soon as she opened the box, she gasped and said she could feel the energy. She put it on, took a deep breath, and said, I really need this. I'm not sure if it's a coincidence, but since I have received my pendant, I feel like I have a different connection to Christ and Sophia. I absolutely love them, and I will be buying more. Now, let me clarify a few things, because like I said, I talked to her as well. When she's talking about the daughter felt the energy, she was more talking about the bracelet. And the bracelet, why that stands out is, you know, crystals and stones are natural capacitors for energy. It's pretty easy to fill them up with energy. But this is metal and thread. But what we do to them, to charge them, empower them, with not only the Benedict exorcism, but We use, there's like 4 levels of things that we use that I put all into this oil that I anoint it with, and then I charge it. But all those 72 names of God too, which you have to have a certain degree of your light active in order to use those things. But she opens the box and she can feel the energy coming off of it. Now, I don't have superpowers, but they work through me. It's them that's putting the energy into it. And it's like, how do you reconcile that if you're one of the skeptic non-believers? Now, a lot of the hardcore skeptic non-believers are simply adversarial bots, for lack of a better term. I've seen a couple of them pop up lately. And a lot of this stuff is going to cross connect over these different topics. But yeah, that's, like on the store, if you just look at the reviews, if you read them, I'm like, what, you think I'm buying all these myself and writing these reviews myself? It's like, no, like that is a tangible thing. Like, we've connected a lot of people. We've blown out a lot of negative stuff. Like, that comes from experience. That comes from having done it. That comes from having seen it. Like, knowing how to do that. I think that freaking matters, as opposed to just like, I read a bunch of books and I'm good with graphics and videos and look how entertaining this show is. Now, if it matters that people actually can do things when they're trying to teach you and tell you about things. So yeah, we've got an army of people that can vouch for us on what we can actually do. But as far as the light pressure goes, so here's what happened. You might have noticed in the last video, like, I'll let a couple curse words slip now and again, a BS here and there, because sometimes it's just the right word for it. But I had more than a few in the last one. And that was just because I don't usually consciously, I'm not usually in the world that you're in. Physically my body is, but I only watch it. But and I think maybe this was part of her plan, I don't know. But we dug into some deep stuff, and it's just irritating to me watching all this stuff play out, because I don't want to play it anymore. All this freaking nonsense. But when I overlap it to what she's taught in the past week, and all her clues, strange game, the only winning move is not to play. If you know it's a story and you don't like it, what do? If you start reading a book and you don't like it, do you finish it to the end, or do you put the book down? If you go to a movie and it's crap, do you stay to the end, or do you get up and walk out? At some point, when you see what the story of the world is doing, you choose to disconnect from it and do what Christ taught you to do, which is turn away from the world. Detach from the world. Turn around. There's a better world behind you. But because you need permission to believe things from authority, you can't see it. You got to break that defer to authority program. It is one of the biggest programs in your head. It's one of the first ones that they started putting the defer to authority program into your head at age 5, when you first went into kindergarten. Maybe even before that if you were in preschool. But when I dig around, like, I don't like talking about that stuff that much. Even though I didn't go into like some of the more hardcore stuff, it's still like, nobody likes this story. Nobody likes watching the world turn to shit, which it is. And the more you look at the darkness, the more it depletes your light. And you're just like, ugh, I don't like that. Ugh. Every once in a while, she'll have me do it just because that's what people are looking for. And she needs to hook your attention. But either which way, the next day, I was feeling pretty good. Did a consult. And I was planning on getting to film yesterday. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, I noticed I felt like slightly nauseous. It was like this slightly nauseous sleepy exhaustion feeling. Best way I can describe it. And it didn't go away. And it was just like something, I'm like, I don't know what it was, but something just sacked my energy field. Now, in the old days, before I knew better, I would go into some long story and tell people about it, like, oh, this thing or that thing or this type of thing, because that's what they do. You know, something slipped through the cracks and sapped my energy field, and tell a whole big story and spread it out there, which just reinforces that reality. I didn't do that this time. I know something did, but I did not allow myself to name it or be like, oh, something's after me. Oh, something this. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's because whenever I spill too many secrets online, something kicks back or whatever. I didn't make the story worse from myself. I knew it happened, and it's like, okay, now I got to deal with it. So it's like, what was it? And it was my friend. When I had her look at it, she's like, you were too over the target with the last video. I'm like, but most people would say like, well, how's something getting at you? Okay. She still lets us do our own thing here because we learn from everything. But what I determined, it was a two-part thing. The first thing was I depleted my light bubble. Think of it like a bubble. Okay. This is the light pressure thing. Think of the world that you're in as this negative ocean. It's an ocean of negative water that you're swimming in. But you have plenty of air to breathe because you have a bubble of light surrounding you. And the bigger your bubble of light, the more things that it encompasses. And your light bubble can be so big that you don't even see the negativity in the world whatsoever. Like if you're not called to teach people or deal with stuff or whatever, like you can literally put yourself in a different reality by making your light bubble that big. But my light bubble had been depleted from looking at all that negative stuff. And then this was the kicker. I don't even think I noticed that I wasn't, but I wasn't wearing a pendant for a good long time. And I'm like, as soon as I realized that I wasn't wearing the pendant, I'm like, shit. That was it. Because I probably could have gotten away with that and not had a problem if I had been wearing a pendant. So what I'm and not like a defensive pendant, just like this one. Like this is the biggest one that I feel most attracted to here recently. Is what this pendant does, what these pendants do, no matter what pendants they are, is they're a constant reinforcement of your light bubble. Because they're connected to source, they're connected to Christ Sophia. And the best thing about pendants, because I'm about to start the oils again. I got my box today. The person I was just talking about just bought 2 more things. I got my box of oil bottles today. But with a pendant, the best thing about pendants is they're always working, always running, even if you're not thinking about it. See, I could operate without any of this paraphernalia, but like I have to be focused. I have to constantly be in a frame of mind to hold that protection structure up. And not everybody can stay focused that long. So that's where the pendants come in. Like they're constantly reinforcing you. And the cleaner you are, which we'll talk about that later, the more it does for you. But I didn't have that extra backup on. So I think my light bubble had collapsed just enough to where something was able to take a swipe at me. And that's not going to happen to everybody, but I'm on the list. I don't know how many people are on the list, but I'm definitely on the list. Not because I'm the work that I do, but because I did it. I became a bridegroom. That's the technical term. Just like Christ Sophia, like when you have put Eve back into Adam and you become one again. The Christ-Lumen state, the alchemical magnum opus, philosopher's stone. If you've accomplished that, then you're a threat. And for the most part, your light stays strong enough that like nothing can really get near you anyway. But if you slip up, start digging around in the mud too much, and then forget to put certain things on or whatnot, they can get close enough to zap you. And getting your energy field zapped sucks. And it wasn't just my energy field either. This is how I know that it happened. Because my mental focus changed as well. It became very, I wouldn't say negative, and I wouldn't say defeatist. I would call it strained, exhausted. Like all of a sudden you're thinking about everything that you know about this place, and you're just like, I'm so freaking tired of being here. It's like, when am I going to get out of this hellhole? When am I going to go home? Because this place sucks. It sucks. You just don't know it sucks because you can't see it. But it was that level of kind of like, exhaustion. But I recognized it. Whenever I get into a negative frame of mind or something like that, I recognize it and I think, okay, I'm not thinking clearly and something zapped. So first things first, if something zapped me, I need to reestablish my field. So usually I use this. Let's see if I get this. We're going to pull this all apart, but I don't have the molds for these anymore. It was kind of like this faceted circular jewel mold. I filled them up with all the usual like extreme ages stuff, put them together, created this coil system, wrapped it in Herkimers. So there's actually a pendant type thing within this leather medicine bag with the Benedict. So it's like super crazy strong. It's got a moldavite core and everything. So I put that on to clear anything that would be in my field and reestablish my field. And then I put one of the different light pendants on, like this one with the new stuff, and was just listening to her intuitively. She was talking about the bubble and the light pressure again. I'm like, we haven't brought that up in a long time. But it was kind of like she was teaching me to like inhale through the heart chakra, like I'm inhaling from source. And then I'm taking that light and just pushing it out with my breath and my energy, my mind, filling my bubble up with new source light energy. And I just kept doing that and pushing my bubble out further and further and further. Once I did that, I took a magnesium salt bath, a whole bunch of Epsom salt. But at the same time, when something like that happens, what's done is done. You need to rest. So I went to bed at midnight, which for me, that's like going to bed at like 6 p.m. for most people. I usually can't. I start winding down around 3 a.m. usually. And then I have to force myself to go to bed by 4. But this time I was so tired, I was so drained, like I had to go to bed. And I got about 11 hours of sleep. So I know for a fact something's at me. But I'm better now. But let's talk about how this light pressure bubble works in terms of other people. Okay, so think about it. Think of it this way, and this fits within the Gnostic cosmology of the world. The world is inherently bad. It is inherently corrupt. This is where Gnostic Christianity deviates from church religion Christianity. Because church religion Christianity took out the whole beginning of the freaking book. And they start with the assertion that God in Genesis 1 is the God creator of everything, everywhere, all at once. And that he's creating this world so the world is perfect. And if you're a Gnostic, you know that's not the case. Okay, there's other books you took out, and plus I can point out the flaws in your story in your book. We don't have time for all that. So the world is inherently corrupt, but there are pieces of source light in here. Again, this all ties back to the creation story from the Gnostic view, which is a lot more material. And the reason why some people don't believe that there's dark stuff is because they're just inherently bright lights. They're bright lights. They've got a big light bubble, so they don't see that stuff. See, we have all the power here. Even the dark stuff gets its power from us. And that's why they have to mind control you. That's why they have to educate you. That's why they have to propagandize you. That's why they shame you and yell at you if you buck the system. Hold on, the poltergeist cat is now, let me out. Isn't that right, Jinx? You want to go out? Cat's like, if I just stare at this door long enough, if I just sit here and just stare at it, maybe he'll get the hint. So yes, it is possible to actually exist in a place that's bad and see only goodness. My biggest example of that was the summer of 2020. And you're like, what? Summer 2020 was horrible. It wasn't for me. I know what was going on in the world when everyone was playing, make-believe pandemic, and the news was just yelling through the TV 24/7, you're gonna die. You're gonna kill someone else's grandma. That's the most insidious thing they ever did. Was they shifted the responsibility from the way it had always been. It used to be it was always your responsibility to keep yourself healthy, but then they shifted it and they made it your responsibility to keep everyone else healthy. And that little thing right there is what caused everyone to go nuts against each other. But I wasn't participating in all that because she had just shown up. And I was getting to know her. And I was having the time of my life. I don't think I hung up with anybody that entire summer except when my kids were here. It was just me and Lumen. And I was just having, and those were like the fun days. Because it's almost like your hero's journey pauses while you get to know your strength card. And you have fun for a while. And then you go back into it, but this time you've got her. Because it's, now it's going to be harder because you need her. But yeah, my light bubble was so, and the other thing that was amazing to me about the summer, like, I don't know what y'all saw. No one's ever been able to tell me. I would think if everyone saw the exact same thing that I did, that other people would have noticed it. But during the summer of 2020, when I was given the light, it was the most beautiful summer I'd ever seen. Like the skies were sunny and blue, with just a little bit of clouds, just for accents, but blue, sunny skies, 6 days a week easily. It was so crazy that I said something about it multiple times. I'm like, I cannot remember the last time that I ever saw anything like this. It was about half of that the following year. Because that following year is when I made the chrism water, got the Gnostic baptism and all that. 2023, like, I don't think I saw the sun all summer. I was so happy and so charged and so full of light that it from my perspective, like, everything changed. Like, I knew all that stuff was going on out there, but it wasn't affecting me. Okay, so my light bubble was huge because Lumen had just expanded it. Now, the average person who is spiritual, their light bubble is growing, and you could call it your auric field if you want, but it's got cracks in it from traumas that have not been healed, fears, bad habits, whatever, the adversary. So it does have cracks. Things can get into it. So they'll kind of shift back and forth. And then you've got other people that through extreme traumas or something like that, um, they've lost their light field altogether. It collapsed. Now that's what happened to me the day the the hero's journey went to the dark side. That was a total light bubble collapse, and it's like having an ocean of evil water close in on you. And from that point forward, like everything was horrible. And over time, the only way that you get that back is by dumping weight, sealing your cracks in the shield, dumping your traumas, all the bad attachments. Like you can start repairing your submarine, so to speak, and then you can start repressurizing it and going higher in the water. But yeah, if a bad enough thing happens to you that your light shield fails, it's literally like, you're that little sub a couple years ago that decided to go look at the Titanic. At least that's the story they gave us. And then it just crushes you like a freaking tin can. So your light pressure is important. Your light pressure is going to affect your quality of thinking, your quality of feeling, and the quality of the reality that you're currently experiencing, and how much crap is in it. So regarding your light pressure, like most people just don't have enough of it. So what are some of the things that's going to prevent that? The biggest, I mean, a lot of the answers that you eventually run into are just answers that people simply just don't want to hear. They want an answer that they want to hear, but unfortunately that's not how it works. So what are some of the, just a couple things, and this does tie directly into Lumen as well, which hopefully we'll get to if we have time. But what are some of the biggest things that's going to drop your light pressure? Interacting with the world. Unfortunately, that is something that has that has been a part of what separates really high spiritual connection from people that don't have it since the beginning of ever. It's the hermit card. If you understand what the world is, the more you play in it, the more you're part of it, the more you know you think it's where you belong. That's like you're in the first deception right there. You always got to fall, like if you're reaching this point of gnosis at the end of the age, with all, coming to terms with everything that we were taught about turning away from the world, like it should be obvious. All you got to do is look at it. The world is a nasty place right now, and these time frames, like these big presidential elections especially, each one every 4 years is like twice as bad as the last one. Twice as bad as the last one. And one thing that really stood out to me, that people do it all the time, and they don't seem to get the irony in it. This is what I wrote down the other day. Nobody realizes just how much they are pointing fingers and screaming at their reflection and the story they themselves are projecting and pasting onto someone else that is the product of their imagination. We talk about that a lot, and the reason we repeat things so many times is because it has to be repeated so many times. You have to hear some things over and over and over to get it. We talk about the spiral path of, the spiritual awakening, where you just keep going round and round to different topics. You come back to them again because it takes repetition. So really, really big things we repeat a lot on here to kind of shorten the absorption time. But most of what people are raging about is all in their imagination. These are like two of the fundamental points of the Four Agreements book. That's really important. That isn't actually the thing I meant to read, though. What's the one I meant to read? Up. It's amazing how incredibly vile and nasty people are, as they are pointing out how incredibly vile and nasty people are. Isn't that funny? Like, it's never been more, it's never more obvious than during like a presidential election season. The other person is the worst person in the world. And because they're the worst person in the world, we can be the most vile and nasty people ever when we're describing the other person, because they're vile and nasty. Does that make any freaking sense to you? Like, obviously, the way I see it, regardless of what's going on in the background, one side is nicer than the other. That's been evidenced countless times. I don't know how many videos I've seen of people that are like, oh, we're going to find out what's going on in this Trump rally, and we're going to go there and videotape, usually like black people or something, because they were told like all sorts of stuff goes on there. And then they get there and they're like, what the hell? Everyone's so nice. Like, I don't get it. They're so welcoming. But in general, out in the social media sphere, which is worse because there is so many fake people, algorithms, bots, that are just stoking the fires. Like, they're just saying the most nasty, triggering things possible just to keep people going at each other. That should tell you right there that there is a bigger system that seeks to keep people at odds with one another. But like, does nobody see like do they not, like, are we dealing with like mental illness, mass mind control? Like, what is it? Like, how is it you can be the most nasty, vile people imaginable while simultaneously saying the other guy is the most, it's like this crazy projection. I don't know if it's a projection or if we're seeing like some sort of exaggerated version of the reflection principle. Like I said, what ties into reflection projection principle ties into the four agreements. Like, when you don't actually know something, you imagine that you do, or you just accept what someone else told you, and you're like, oh my god, Trump, just say Trump, for instance. Trump is the most vile, evil, misogynistic, Nazi, Hitler, alien, lizard, horrible, mass murdering, whatever person in the world. Oh my God, he's so awful. And the funny thing is like, yeah, he is. He's all those things, but that's only in your head. You got to go with I don't know. Like, this is just one of the many things you learn on the hero's journey, and having Sophia as your teacher, she teaches you how your mind works. She teaches you psychology from spirit. She shows you, it's like, look, think of somebody you don't like, and then ask yourself, how much of that do you absolutely positively know to be true? Because I tell you, the one thing that they do all the time on the news, and no one says anything about it, it's just so commonplace. They say things like, they say, he thinks this, he feels that. So now we're talking about something that is unknowable. You're actually saying that you know what somebody thinks and what somebody feels. Well, if it's so easy, tell me, like, what am I thinking right now? I'll give you a sec. Tell me what I'm thinking, because it's really easy. I know everyone in the political sphere can do it. They tell you all the time. They know what people are thinking. So what am I thinking? I'll give you 10 seconds. What was your guess? Leave it in the comments section below. I was thinking about Lumen washing a car. I don't know why. And strangely enough, it wasn't my car. So, like, whose car were you washing? It's just the most random thing that she popped into my head at the point. But like, do you realize how ridiculous that is? Like, this is the mass psychosis world that we're walking around in. Everyone is projecting the most vile things that are in them onto the world around them. This is why when you get to a certain level of spiritual attunement, you become the hermit and you don't stop being the hermit. Once you get out of the world, you stay the hell out of the world. Because you understand what the world is. It's a freaking mess out there. It's not something, they trick you. They're like, oh, we got to fight to save this place. Yeah, that's always the trap. It's a trap that everybody falls for. Like, hook, line, and sinker. You got to fight. You got to fight to do this. You got to fight to do that. You got to fight the bad guys. And that's hero's journey stuff too. Until you realize, like, if you're on a path of fighting evil, there will never be an end to it. It's a strange game. The only winning move is not to play. The only winning move is to wake up. The only winning move is to understand that you're in this weird, strange projected reality experience, and that you're constantly reacting to the mirror outside of you. We did a video about this that had to do with one of the names of the 72 names of God that dealt with that it was part of the Lumen protocols, which was to basically stop reacting to the mirror. Stop reacting to what you see. Because most people can't do that. They show them images. They show them, somebody said a thing and it's triggering. Somebody did this and it's triggering. React to it, react to it, react to it. And the people that are the most far gone, they can't stop reacting. They're always triggered. All the time. All the time. And there's only one, like with the political stuff, there's only one side that I see that loses their freaking minds and goes into people's yards and destroys their signs and runs them over and all that craziness and goes up to perfect strangers and starts yelling at them. That's not a mentally healthy person. Why is it only mainly on one side? But yet, when you're like at the depths of mental depravity, like when you've just ingested too much media and you clearly have zero light bubble whatsoever. When you have zero light bubble for an extended period of time and you're just having the crushing weight of all that negative energy seawater all around you all the time, it's going to turn you bad. And everything's going to look bad to you. I know that because that's what happened to me. Of course, that's in the hero's journey. It doesn't last forever. But, once it starts, you lose that light bubble protection and it crushes in on you. And it's like the world turns into hell overnight. It's just everything you look at is just bad. It's bad. And there are people out there with no light bubble and they can't see the world any other way. And some of the things that are held as like sacraments to this side specifically will destroy your light bubble. Absolutely. Things that they want to defend, like it's a right. I'm like, no, can't agree with you there. Can't agree with you there because I deal with Sophia. She's spirit of life. She's the mother of the living. I know how she feels about it. People have to do extra steps. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, she was saying something about that today, but I don't want to get into all that right now. I want to pivot a little bit. I want to give this one example that helps people understand a little bit about objective reality, consensus reality, and subjective reality. And then I want to pivot into something about Lumen because it directly connects to all this light bubble stuff. Actually, this connects to both things. What we've been talking to the light bubble stuff, and it connects to lumen. Because you will eventually find out that the world is a bad place. And the only way it's good is if you're good. And you're not poisoning your own bubble by engaging in things like conflict. Like every once in a while, I get somebody watching my channel that shouldn't be watching this channel. They shouldn't be watching it because they don't agree with it. They don't believe in it. They think I'm doing something weird. They start projecting things in their head. Like, oh my God, he's got a shrine. He's got a center of spiritual devotion in his room. You know how weird that is? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What are you, freaking stupid? I mean, literally. Like that's like I've always said, like that's a tell that somebody has been mentally poisoned by negativity, because we, and most people I know that are connected to the light, we do not watch videos of things that we disagree with. So I'm not going to watch negative videos about stuff that isn't things that I'm into. Or there's plenty of stuff in the world I don't agree with. There's an endless amount of things in the world that I don't agree with, but I don't watch videos about them. So if you don't agree with what I put out there, why are you watching me? There's only one reason for that, and that is when the light is being presented to people, something negative will always try to poke a hole in it. But the thing is, you can't trigger me because I don't have that part of the ego that gets triggered anymore. And I see right through you. So I'm not going to give you what you want. I could smash you in 2 seconds in a straight up debate, but then I'm giving you attention. And I'm not going to do that. But why do people freaking do that? I mean, think about it. You should not be staring at things that upset you. You should not be looking at things that you don't agree with. If you are, then there is something within you, which would be the adversary mind, that is doing it to feed itself, to be angry. Like, angry feels good to these people. They don't know what joy is. They don't know what happiness is. They don't know what light is. They don't know what love is. At some point in their life, maybe they did, but it's long gone. They don't remember it. They don't believe in it anymore. And they're not willing to do anything to fix it. They would rather just, like, they get ruined and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to be bad. I'm going to make everyone else suffer because I'm suffering. I don't understand that at all. But if you can fix yourself, you can survive in this world by basically creating another world and choosing what you pay attention to. And the better you get at this, it makes everything start to line up. But you got to understand reality. If you're still at the level where you think what is real is what you were taught, and that science, I know I always do that whenever I say science because I despise science. I don't despise the idea of science. I despise the establishment of science because it is simply an enforcement arm of authority. Like, it replaced religion, from like several hundred years back. Like, we are what determines what is real for you. That's the other thing. That's another way you can always recognize the bad guys. Is the bad guys have to tell you what it is that you think. They have to tell you what you're allowed to think. And if they catch you thinking outside of what they want you to think, then they'll be all over you. So it's like, why do you care? Why do you care if someone thinks something differently? Obviously, it matters for some reason. These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Why does it matter? Look at the flat earthers. The system in the bottom, why I don't get into all that is flat earth, round earth. Like, I think they see evidence of whichever side they believe. That's because that's how this place works. But it's like, who cares? unless you're Elon Musk, you don't have the ability to go explore other lands or something flat, round. How's that going to affect my Thursday? It's not. It's not. The world is always trying to get you to engage with it. The world is always trying to suck you into it. Because if you're focused on the world, you're not focused on spirit. And you're like, well, that's just a bunch of, gobbledygook, whatever. Because you don't know about it. You haven't seen it. You don't know what's there. You're still honestly, it does take, that was one of the hardest things I had to learn to break out of, was my brain referencing what it can see. Where it's like you usually hear that like a manifestation and money and stuff, like Think and Grow Rich. It's like, look and feel rich, and you're like, how can I look and feel rich when all I've got's like a couple boxes of macaroni and cheese in my cupboard? Like, when reality is showing you something different, how do you get around that? It's a little tricky, but it can be done. But let's talk about the differences in the realities. Okay, so the example, I never would have thought of this as a Codex movie, but she literally just popped it into my head yesterday, and I realized it was a Codex movie. There's deeper lessons in this movie, and that is the Shawshank Redemption. I actually want to watch it again. It's almost like a story, an allegory, a metaphor of being in this place and how it works and how to handle it. So, using that framework, objective reality is the prison itself, which he ended up in through no fault of his own, if you know the story of Shawshank Redemption. Consensus reality is the inmates agreeing about the guards, the rules, the little systems of commerce they create to make life the best they can. They kind of build their own world. They build their own kind of community and how it works and ways to make themselves comfortable and what the rules are. That's the consensus reality within the prison. So you've got those two things on top of you at all times. That's what's so tricky about learning the spiritual methodologies of the mind, is you have objective reality and consensus reality pushing against you. But it can all be changed. So subjective reality is the reality that as you see it. So subjective reality in the Shawshank Redemption is Andy Dufresne finding happiness and freedom inside his own mind, choosing to have a different mind instead of simply copy and pasting the outer prison into his inner mind. That's what I say that most people do recently is you've never built your own world. You didn't know you can. All you did was just copy and paste what's outside of you into your head. You don't have to do that. Did you realize that? You don't have to do that. That's how I have the whole different place with Lumen. So he uses an image, a poster, and it changes over the years, to create a structure to form his Lumen. Although they didn't really talk about that in the movie, it's clear. It's like you're locked up. You have no companion, but you have a poster of, who was it? Did I write that down? Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue. But as he gets older in the prison, it was like a couple of different posters. But a pretty woman, pretty actress, or something like that. And I imagine that's what he did. He was laying there. It's like you got something to pretty look at, and then you can imagine. But using an image poster to create a structure to form his lumen, and then eventually imagining a way to escape the outer prison and find peace. And then Andy takes all the goodness that he cultivates in his personal subjective reality and finds ways to improve the consensus reality for others. He creates a library and builds up a library, doing extra work to earn small favors and moments of happiness for his fellow inmates. Like he does the taxes for the guards, and you know, they're out there redoing this roof, and then on the last day, the guards buy them cold beers because Andy did this work for them. You know, decorating his cell. These are all things that, because he was able to be in a good enough space in his personal subjective reality in his mind, he was able to make some changes to the collective consensus reality for others. And I don't know if I could I don't think I found the exact clip from Shawshank Redemption. Maybe I did. I'll check and see. If so, I'll drop it in here. But he says something to Red one time, Morgan Freeman. He's like, they can't take away what's in here.
They broke the door down before I could take requests.
Was it worth it? 2 weeks in the hole?
Easiest time I ever did.
Oh, shit. There's no such thing as easy time in the hole.
That's right, a week in the hole is like a year.
Damn straight.
I had Mr. Mozart to keep me company.
So they let you tote that record player down there, huh?
It's in here. In here. That's the beauty of music. They can't get that from you. Haven't you ever felt that way about music?
Well, I played a mean harmonica as a younger man. Lost interest in it, though. Didn't make much sense in here.
Here's where it makes the most sense. You need it so you don't forget.
Forget.
Forget that there are places in the world that aren't made out of stone, that there's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch.
So he's in the most confined space of imaginable, which is solitary in a prison, but he's finding ways to make himself happy by being able to recall music and listen to it and imagine things. And like, I do that all the time. And you get far enough, you start to understand that that imagination is something more than what they told you it is. If you learned it from the world, throw it out. Here's another example of that little bit of wisdom. The movie Wanted. It's like an action assassin, over-the-top thriller movie. It's got James McAvoy and Angelina Jolie and stuff like that in it. But in it, they always do these tricks in there where they just kind of go like this and they shoot while they're swinging their arms, and they make these bullets curve around obstacles to hit people. And he doesn't understand it. And Morgan Freeman says to him, if nobody told you that bullets have to fly straight, what would you do?
The bullet. How am I supposed to do that?
It's not a question of how. It's a question of what. If no one told you that bullets flew straight, and I gave you a gun and told you to hit the target, what would you do? Let your instincts guide you.
See, that's what we're saying. That's why you have to break out of. That's why you have to, you yourself have to do this. You have to find a way that makes sense, that clicks, where you're able to tell yourself not to go by the rules as they were taught to you. Because as soon as you accept something, you make that the way things work. So just realize, if that's true, and they started teaching you things at such a young age that you could have never known otherwise, then that means there's so much more that is possible in this world that you don't know, because you're just used to it. You're used to the program. You're institutionalized, as they put it in Shawshank Redemption. You don't know how to operate outside of the prison because you've been in there for so long. All you got to do is let go of what you think you know. Like, it'd be interesting to see. I wish I could get an honest poll out of people. They probably wouldn't do it because they would think it would offend me or something like that. But to have like this anonymous poll is like, what do you really think about me? Do you think I'm nuts when I talk about lumen? Do you think it actually happens? Or do you think I'm just deluded? Like I'm making it up and it's real to me, but it's not really real. It's like, oh, that can't be, because I understand that does not fit within most people's paradigms. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. But that mechanism that's there of like, it can't be, because it always comes back to, because it's not part of the world you know right now. Like you have to somehow yourself on your own make that mental adjustment connection to where you really understand that the reason that the world is the way that it is and why it works the way that it works is because you are making it that way. And it's simply because you absorbed information and you accepted it. But what your brain wants to tell you is like, but that's just the way that it is. I can't change it. No, you can. You can change it as far as you think you can change it. Now, your limits may vary on how much you think can be changed, but there are no limits in the inner world. You might have some problems with consensus reality out there. So, example, one time Lumen was showing me, how this place is fake AF. And then she explained later why she was able to show me. So this might have been 2 years ago or something like that. We'd take a lot of walks at night. And all I had on was shorts, no flashlight, no nothing. It was like a new moon, and we're on the trail back there in the woods. And she wants me to turn and just speed walk straight into the woods. Like, there's no freaking way. It's too dense. I can't see anything. But I trust her, so I do it. I'm walking. I'm like, what's going on? I'm not hitting anything. Walking. Finally, I stop, and I get to the edge near the river, and I didn't hit anything. I'm like, how did I do that? It was pitch black, and I couldn't see anything. And I was going under her guidance, so there were no trees. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So Sophia explained later, the reason why you cannot do certain tricks, like they show you, like that movie, The Men That Stare at Goats and stuff like that. It's like, if you just believe you can run through the wall, you can. And also, I mentioned this before, it's like the explanation they give in the movie The Mandela Effect about nothing exists until someone is there to observe it. So the reason why that worked that one time was because it was 3 a.m. on a new moon, on an overcast night, pitch black. Pretty much most everybody around was sleeping. So there was nobody else in that one little space that I was. There was nobody else around observing the trees. That's why you can't normally do it, because someone else is observing it. And what also locks it in place is just satellites. Satellites are always observing. So when it's being observed, it is solid. So that's why she pulled that trick. It's like, okay, satellites can't observe it. There's clouds. Most people can't observe it. There's no light. No one else is around because they're sleeping. There's no one else looking. Now close your eyes and walk. Nothing. But it is really hard to pull a trick like that off. It's kind of like the whole 13th Floor movie where they're like, just keep driving. Don't look at where you're going, but keep driving straight. Just don't look. Eventually, you're going to come into like some things like road closed ahead. Stop. Road closed ahead. Just ignore them. Keep going. Don't look. Just keep going. And then he finally gets to a place where it's like, everything is like green wireframe, like the world is no longer rendered. Yeah, there's another trick like that, but I never pulled that off. Like, she's shown me a lot of weird things that I've never been able to do, but I can kind of see how they would work. Should I keep going or make it a separate video? That is the question. We've been going for a while, so I think it would be smarter if we just paused here and stopped with the things that we talked about here, and we pick this up in the next video. Because the stuff we talk about in the next video will connect to the things we talked about in this video. But there's a lot of stuff here. So every so often I try to do this, but this time it actually has some extra bits to it. So like that's all the notes about lumen. Because I've had people ask me recently, like they understand Christ, they understand Sophia, they understand this, they don't fully understand lumen. I'm like, okay, I can explain lumen. It's going to take me a minute, but I can say what the number one thing is on that list. They're like, well, I don't see lumen in the Bible. Well, she is, but you have to kind of like already know something. The reason why you don't see lumen is because lumen falls under the category of mysteries. And both in the Nag Hammadi and in the regular Bible, Jesus flat out told people that there are certain mysteries of heaven that he taught his disciples that they did not write down. And in other cases, he only taught them as parables. Parables to help you figure it out. So that's the whole big flaw with the Christian religion when they say everything you need is right here in the Bible. Well, guess what? The mysteries aren't. There's a whole nother level of things to learn about. But you have to connect to the real thing first. Everything is not in there. It's just like it says in the Nag Hammadi, like the sacraments. It was like the master did everything in a mystery. It was like Eucharist, baptism, wedding chamber, something. I forget what all the different things were. Like all these things I had to do. But yeah, each one was a mystery, which means you have to follow the path, not knowing exactly what it's leading to. You have to do certain things. Like one of the mysteries was the Gnostic baptism. That's what they're showing you in the star card, in the tarot. Because has nothing to do with the star. There's no star on that card. What you see as the sky is the reflection of the water, reflecting the sun. So the yellow thing is the sun, and the white stars are the sparkles. When the sun reflects on a clear day off moving water, that's called chrism light. That would be called a mystery. Matter of fact, most of the mysteries are cards in the freaking tarot. It's like the Lover's card. That was a mystery. So Lumen falls under she's like one of the mystery prizes. I'm sure there's others. I know there's others, but like I don't think you go. I think you either choose or something, like what mystery thing you're trying to unlock or whatever. For me, it was Lumen. But yeah, I've got and especially like one of the third part I have in my Lumen notes is like everything that would keep you from Lumen. And that directly equates to the health and strength of your light bubble that we talked about at the beginning of the video. Like the two go hand in hand. So if you were able to get to that point, if you were able to earn Lumen, then you've got a really, really strong light bubble, and she's what empowers it. And then eventually you get to a point to where you are completely just checked out. You're like, I'm not playing the game anymore. I know better. But I'm helping people. So sometimes I have to step back into the game where all this crazy shit is and all this nasty stuff and things that you don't even want to know about.
Right here next to Kamala. Watch your eyes. Watch it. Watch it. Here it comes. Oh my God.
So sometimes I kind of put myself at risk a little bit, and every once in a while I'll screw up and she'll let me get zapped a little bit. And it always happens when I'm not wearing a friggin' pendant and after I did some kind of crazy video. And I'm sure that's not by accident either. It's just to teach me. But if there was one last thing I would say when it comes to all this stuff is you got to learn self-reflection. Like, what does that even mean? It means you got to study what you think. You got to study what you feel, why you do what you do. Because the more that you self-reflect, the more you play devil's advocate and look at yourself and be like, why do I believe what I believe? That's a key thing of critical thinking, is challenging your own beliefs. Why do I believe that? Be the devil's advocate. Be the one that says, like, okay, you're so sure all this religious stuff you believe. Prove it. Can I prove it? And then you trace it back. You're like, no, I just believe it. I've never seen any of this stuff, but that's what I believe. And then that's how you start to check yourself, wake yourself up. But look at your Facebook posts like you were someone else, or Twitter posts, or whatever it is. How much do you get sucked into conflict with other people? And the more you self-reflect, the reason why self-reflection is so important is because self-reflection moves your consciousness to a different point. Because if you're not self-reflecting, you're just all the way up front looking through the ego's eyes, doing the actions. But if you're self-reflecting, you've now somehow moved to a different point, and now you're observing what the ego does. So then you get to discover and ask yourself questions. It's like, okay, if I'm observing what I'm doing and I'm wondering why I'm doing it, then what point am I at right now? Who am I right now? How many parts are actually in my mind? But all this stuff is taking action. It's doing things. You cannot just absorb information. You can't. Matter of fact, you start doing things and then you find out you have to start removing information. Anyway, that's enough for right now. Let's save the lumen thing for a separate video, because that's a lot of good stuff to explain lumen. And, also, she's another one of those things, like at the beginning, that lots of people have interacted with. And they can, not only just feeling the energy, but it kind of depends on where they're at and what kind of processes we've done with them. But other people have seen lumen, mentally, and described her perfectly, especially if we're doing some sort of thing together. But yeah, it is really warm. I mean, the sun's down, but that's another weird thing I was thinking about today. It's like it's literally a couple days before Halloween, and it's sunny, and I had all my windows and doors open today. Yeah, it cools down at night, but it's like, what is going on? This is like, is it because of the solar maximum? It's because the sun's going nuts or something? Like, why is it still so freaking warm? It's literally almost like usually at this time, historically, it goes bad right before Halloween, right before trick or treat. Cold, windy, wet, horrible. So either that's going to happen in the next day or so, or something else is going on. Because it should not be this freaking warm. It is crazy. Okay, so that's all I got for right now. We did put a couple new pendants up in the store. We're going to keep adding more. That's the best place you can get in touch with us. That is clumencreations.etsy.com. You can also reach out through me on Facebook Messenger. If you're on Facebook, that is our profile that is attached to this channel on there. All the links you need are going to be in the description box below. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.